While the 2024 Colorado Rockies are a bit of a mess, what about the future Colorado Rockies? Let's dive into the 2024 draft with Blake Street Banter.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 19th day of July in the year 2024. Pretty crazy that we're already at that point. Second half of the Rockies season underway today. Thank you all so much for keeping it locked on here to the Locked On Rockies podcast all season long. We are your free and streaming daily Colorado Rockies podcast, available on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. You can find us there. And when you do, if you leave a comment, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff, you really help the show grow. I'm Paul Holden, your Rockies fan extraordinaire. Real happy to be joining you today on another great episode of Locked On Rockies. We're brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Aaron McBride joins us here. You might know Aaron a little bit more on Twitter as Blake Street Banter, one of the best in the biz when it comes to daily Rockies interaction there on the socials. Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well.
You know, a little bit of a pulse there. Let's before we dive into the rookies talk and the draft here. Ryan McMahon at second base. At least he got to play, right? That was kind of cool.
Right? Yeah, we can go on and on about that. I'm not as upset about it as I think most of Rockies Nation is. I mean, he's versatile. He can play second base. He can play first base. You know, Ryan doesn't care as long as he's playing in the game somewhere. Who cares? And the one at bat is I'm more salty about than where he's playing defensively.
Yeah, that was a bummer. And unfortunately, it was a Ryan McMahon at bat where he got burned on a fastball up and away. But, you know, what can you do? It is everyone was throwing basically 100 the entire
The All-Star game is so much different now, man.
Right? Isn't it crazy? And it looked like it was going to be a little different. Shohei hits the bomb, and then the AL comes back, and you're like, all right, there might be some fireworks in this. And then it kind of petered out there. I feel like it was a pretty good rendition of what 2024 baseball is. It's kind of like, wow, here's this big explosion for like an inning and a half, and then it's like, we'll see what happens through the rest of the way. But we can agree the uniforms, though, those got to go.
I bring back the wear your team's away or home uniform, call it good, and let's move on. I don't know why we keep doing this nonsense with it.
Money, but I can't imagine a lot. I don't know. I'm not buying one of those anytime soon. So, anyway, let's dive into the real stuff. Aaron, I know your focus this week was the draft. Blake Street Banter, if you don't know, one of the premier podcasts and websites that talk about Rockies prospects, talk about the Rockies currently as well. But if you want to talk interviews with prospects, you want to learn more about the system, the farm system of the Colorado Rockies, Blake Street Banter is exactly where you want to be. So that's why we had to bring you on, because I need to learn about our picks and who the Rockies have selected. And I'm pretty pumped by what I'm hearing about the first pick for the Rockies there. It sounds like the Rockies are really excited about it as well.
Yeah, I appreciate those kind words there. I am kind of the voice of the two that did all the background knowledge. Tyler Fedor is the man behind the scenes that does all the draft stuff, but he does it all. And when the call for Chase Burns was called at second by the Reds, all of Rockies Nation was pretty stoked. Like, we got our man. They had to have been screaming and running up to the platform that we are going to go Charlie Condon. Like, there was no doubt about it. And what he brings to the table, I just want to throw a little nugget that this is fun. You do this. We did this yesterday on our podcast, so this is going to be a little fun exercise for you. I don't know if you've listened or not, but what do you think Charlie Condon's OPS is on fastballs that are 94 miles per hour or higher?
Oh boy, that's a very specific stat. Right. Hopefully it's good. I'm going to say 837.
I need you to double that and then add a little bit more. Yes, 1.7 OPS on fastballs, 95 4 plus. And that was a little Tyler nugget that everybody wants to poke holes. Like, no, Charlie, he can't do this. He can't do that. Where's he going to play defensively? Blah, blah, blah. And one of the holes that people like to call out was he's not going to be able to do this with Major League pitching. 95 mile per hour is the standard, and he did that in the SEC. So again, if you want to find a hole in his, go ahead and tweet at Ty Fedor, and he will just prove you wrong and get you back on the hype train.
So what is it about? I mean, I think the big thing that people will see dude mashes home, like not only mashes, but mashes home runs, home run records. Is that the biggest selling point? Is that the main reason to be excited, or is there more to his game that makes him, the third overall pick in the draft?
I mean, yeah, he's a 6'6" slugger. He's gonna hit, like we were saying, like 50 bombs, like soon. He's gonna crush through it. Like he is that guy. He has that pedigree to be that power first baseman, third baseman, corner outfielder. He's athletic enough to figure out where we're gonna put him. I think Tyler's kind of thinking third base. I can see him at first base, just being that solid bat in that spot at all times. He's athletic enough to do it. He has 70 grade power. But the crazy thing is that he has a zone contact rate of 89%. The average across D1 was 84 and a half. So like he's making contact. It's usually hard contact, and his chase rate is at 22%. So he's not chasing a lot, and that's under the league average at the D1 level. So he's unpolished too. He's only had 2 years at the D1 level, and so he's still got some, growing to do. And if you're starting with this foundation of this chase rate and this power, this being an athlete, like you can't really go wrong. And I know I say that with how draft picks go, like it's
Right.
a 50-50 shot, right? But there is absolutely no reason to think that there is a dud in Charlie Condon. Like,
well, and that's how you have to think of especially baseball, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
we're not going to see this is 2-3 years, and in reality, if he's playing third base, you would, with him being in college, and I kind of want to touch on that in a little bit. A Ryan McMahon replacement towards the end of the contract in a couple of years, especially now as we're hearing that Ryan McMahon most likely will not be, it seems very much like he's not going to get traded. I don't think he will, but until the trade deadline passes, we at least have to say the qualifier there. So, I mean, there's a lot to be intrigued there by, and like you said, people can try to poke the holes or find that stuff, but good contact, low whiff. That sounds like exactly like the recipe for success the Rockies are looking for. Because what do the Rockies do? They don't make good contact in the zone, and they whiff. So yep. I feel like when not only is it the power mix, which again, what are the Rockies severely lacking in is consistent power. All of those offensive metrics, those kind of build into something that it's like, if that dude's mashing, we'll find a spot for him at Coors Field. He can play first base. We'll figure it out.
Absolutely. And that's the thing there. He likes to elevate the fastball. That's something the Rockies kind of focused on with their bats in this draft. Was a lot of the guys have some swing and miss, like the later rounds, but the elevation's there. Like the Rockies don't have to teach the elevation in the swing. And so we're kind of missing that a little bit. We see Togs, right? 34 hits, 16 of them bombs or something crazy like that. And Charlie Condon's already kind of got that built in with the less whiff, less chase. So let's roll with it. And let's add something different to Coors Field.
And I want to dive into some of the other picks, but before we do that and before we take the break, just to kind of stick on this topic, what do you think of the approach of going college level, and not only college level, but going for an offensive player? Something that I think I'm glad the Rockies did. I think a lot of people sit every time it's pitching, no matter what, when it comes to drafting and trading for the Rockies. But you're ignoring the product on the field if you're only going to focus on the pitching when you think about the concerns with the offense and the issues there. So I'm curious about your thoughts of them going college a lot. I feel like they did a lot of college age kids in this draft, and a lot more, I think, offense heavy than at least what people would expect when they think of what the Rockies should be drafting for.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a little bit about that. I love the fact they went to college bat, because something's not clicking. Like you see Veen and Montgomery, their bats are there when they're healthy, but the injuries are there. And so how does that play out? How do they work through that? Drew Romo's kind of figured it out as the high school bat, but the Rockies are so good in the international pool. Like there's no real reason to go younger than the high school bat. To the point of the pitching, they're loaded. Like they added 4 or 5 guys at the trade deadline last year. They went heavy last year. I think it was like 16 of the 22, 23 picks in the 23 draft that were arms. You have the big 3 in Dollander, Palmquist, and Sullivan, but you could add a Connor Stain, Michael Proshecki. Like you can go down the road about who these arms are going to be. Sure, Rockies always need pitching, but so does every other team. Rockies need some power. They need something bat. Every team needs everything. It's kind of my mentality with it. So like you don't really draft for need. You don't draft for future. Like, it's what is the best available pick right there, and how do we develop it, and then how do we fill in around that? And I think that was kind of the game plan. It kind of felt like this year, like who's the best available at that time. We have a certain type. You'll see that in the pictures a little bit. If you go down to Blake Street Banter, shamelessplug.com, and see Tyler's all 21 rundown of all the players, you'll see a type. You'll see a type in the arms. You'll see a type in the left arm, the right arm. You'll see the type in the bats. And they had a certain game plan, and they took the best available that met that underslot in the second day 2, day 3 stuff to be able to get Condon, Brecht, and Lewis there in the 3rd round. So I love it.
Yeah. Let's learn a little bit more about some of these picks and a couple of the other ones. I think the number one there was the star there and Condon, and I can't wait for that to continue to go. And I think, again, another thing where it's another reminder this time of year that I got to watch more college baseball, because I'm missing out on a lot of the fun, because that tournament's always a good time. But let's talk a little bit more about some of the other people that were drafted by the Rockies and continue to break down the Rockies draft. And then we'll shift focus to the current 2024 Rockies, all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about our folks that make this show possible, and that includes Booking.com. Yeah, with summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always wanted to learn more about, but haven't done so. And maybe that might even include the minor league system. Maybe you want to go check out some minor league ballparks and just see a different part of the country. Well, the beauty of baseball is there's so much baseball all over the country. And when you need to find where to go, Booking.com's got you covered. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even if you head to Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, or Phoenix, Arizona, the rival cities of the Rockies. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the USA for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. We're also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Why is it so popular? Well, because it's you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about people stealing your favorite player away from you, or taking that hot take that you had, or that tip that you got. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. Brenton Doyle hits, Ezekiel Tovar stolen bases, Brenton Doyle stolen bases as well. Why not? You can see all the action for yourself and watch the winnings roll in on PrizePicks and the PrizePicks app. You can turn $100 or $10 into $1,000 and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Folks, this is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Thanking you for making us your first listen of the day. Reminder to go check out Locked On Sports today, and that SiriusXM's got you covered for all your Rockies play-by-play action all season long. Aaron McBride of Blake Street Banter joining us. We're reacting to the Rockies draft. Spent the good time there talking about our future 50 home run hitting first baseman there for the Rockies. But let's talk about some of the other picks. Tell me, maybe we don't have to necessarily go in order. Maybe the ones that stuck out to you the most, or the ones that you think that we need to highlight. Because the thing about baseball drafts, a lot of people get drafted, so it's kind of hard to keep up with everybody.
Yeah, it's insane. Like we and again, another shameless plug. We had Charlie Blackman talk about his draft experience. It's on our YouTube, Blake Street Banter. He got drafted 3 times, which you don't see a lot. And that was when rounds were 40, 50 rounds a pick, right? So we got 20 rounds now. They've definitely lessened it since COVID. But the guys that you wanted to see, like, everybody needs to be on the Brody Brecht train. Dude, man, out of Iowa. Pipes 90s, can touch 100 if you want, has an insane slider, and he's working on a changeup. The biggest thing with him is the control issue, as, again, there is a type. If you go down of all the pitchers that the Rockies kind of selected, it's the control thing. But they have big stuff, which is intriguing. You kind of see what they're doing with a Chase Dollander is like the best example of just being able to throw strikes and kind of work through things. So Brody Brecht is just a big dude. He's got a dog on him. When he got drafted, he was expected to go in the first round. He was our 38th pick overall, our compensation pick. He just said good. And that just the dog that you want to go run through a wall with, like, I will run behind you, Brody. He was a football player for Iowa for a few seasons too. Before
That's right. That's the interesting thing. He had to pick between baseball and football, right?
And we are glad he picked baseball. So huge arm, big stuff there. He probably will start as a starter. I could see a nice little bullpen monster of Jaden Hill and then Brody Brecht, like just piping 90s, high 90s, and a devastating slider in the future. So he's the one that jumps off the board. And I think the Rockies were able to get him where they were because of go a little bit over slot with that. And that's where you kind of save some money down in the bottom. Jared Thomas, very athletic dude, very Sterling Thompson-esque, came out of Texas. So Troy Tulowitzki tutelage, they had a lot of conversations at his time there, which obviously makes all Rockies fans super excited. But the dogs, the ones that you want to kind of hope for and watch that we love at Blakesy Banner are the day 2, day 3 picks. And I think my favorite guy is LeBaron Johnson Jr. He's a right-hand pitcher out of Texas, picked in their 5th round. Big fastball over the top. Like I said earlier, the control of it is still iffy, but he's got a nice little slider that sits between 85, 88 to go along with his fastball that's at 96. The 40% whiff rate on that slider above league average. And then he has a low spin changeup that sits about 86. Again, 30% whiff rate on that. So he's the big one that I'm keeping an eye on. And then I'm a little biased in this one, but there's a guy that was drafted from my area, Caledonia, Michigan, went to Western Michigan. His name is Luke Thielen. He's a right-hand pitcher picked in the 15th round. He's just somebody I'm going to watch because I have that little extra tie to it, but he can hit 99, sits in mid 90s, fastball, 30% whiff rate in the MAC there. And then he's got the slider with the upper 70s. So you're picking 15, 20 mile per hour difference in that. And so if he can hone in all that control, he could be a nice little sneaky relief arm there.
You know, we the folks that tune into the show know we love the Maction around here. A proud Ohio University alum myself. Still not really over the Joe Rock trade. Was really hoping that one was going to pan out because I was like,
that's everything
on the Rockies. Come on, baby, that's golden for me. So, but great to hear. Especially you were mentioning Brecht there. It sounds like he's got a little Cal Quantrill in him.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what the Rockies kind of saw in that. Like, they're going to work on his 2 fastballs. They're going to make sure he's got that different variation. The one thing that he does throw hard, but his fastball is still a work in progress. So
Mike, I guess leading off of that, you mentioned off the top, there's a control issue. I'm watching the Rockies this year. I'm seeing a lot of I'm seeing a lot of walks. I'm seeing a bullpen that can't hit the zone late in games. I'm not really confident in the Rockies' ability to develop, especially control. I think that's one of the worst. Like it's one of the most frustrating things as a fan is I'm watching and it's like, I love Justin Lawrence, but we can't sit here and ignore that Justin Lawrence has been, anything but disappointing this year. And you can go down the list. Tyler Kinley. I think Victor Vodnik might be the only person out of the Rockies bullpen that you can say hasn't been at least disappointing. So I'm just curious, are you confident in this organization's ability to work on those things and get them to a point that when they get into that major league situation, they'll be able to hit their spots?
I am, as a fan, as a guy that watches way too much minor league baseball, there's a lot of hope on the horizon. And that's not just with the players and the talent that's there, but it's also with what the Rockies have done with the pitching staff. You see some of these, you see the control being figured out in Fresno and Spokane in particular, and it's becoming less of a problem as they get to Hartford. We're not going to get into Albuquerque because that's a whole nother can of worms, altitude and the PCL and all that. But like just the control, what has been seen from just a few guys going from that Fresno, Spokane, Hartford threshold, like there is some development in there and the walks aren't that big of an issue as it is at the major league level. I mean, every pitcher is going to throw walks, right? But like, it's not as severe at the minors, which means they're doing stuff, they're working on stuff. And a lot of that is that control.
So I guess my question is like, what role does Bud Black and Daryl Scott play in their development? I mean, I think another thing people might be critical of, it's like we got Victor Vodnik again. He's thrown a ton of innings this year, and Bud Black kind of has put some young guys in some tough positions to start their careers, and for them to have limited opportunities so far this year. I'm just curious, would you feel more confident in the team with them at the helm still to continue the progress that they've been making at the lower levels and kind of keep that cohesiveness? Or is that something if a change happens at the top where the Rockies, that could impact what we might see or the philosophies at the lower levels?
I mean, that's a fantastic question. I love that question, but I like to think that the people that are in charge are smarter than what I am, than I know, right? And I think Flint Wallace, the coordinator of the pitching strategies in the Colorado Rockies system, he is hands-on at every single level, and he did a conversation with the play-by-play voice of the Fresno Grizzlies a few weeks ago, and he was going pitcher by pitcher and what this pitcher is working on, what this pitcher needs to do. So he's very involved with this development of these guys that are moving up through the system. So in my mind, my perfect ideal world, even as a Colorado Rockies fan, this is what we like to do at Blake Street Banter. We like to think, and things have changed. Like if you look at the last 2 or 3 years, the Colorado Rockies across the system, it is completely different than what we grew up on. I like to think that Flint Wallace is working with these guys, and that stuff is carrying up to Bud Black and Daryl Scott at the major league level. This is what works. This is what they're doing. This is how you should utilize that player.
It's just been tough to see, because I think that it's really hard to just tell, especially the bullpen, because starters, it's really like Dakota Hudson's probably the one, the exception, and Feltner's been up and down, especially at home. That one's really weird. Like that is really weird. I know it's Coors Field, but like that's even extra anomaly there. But all right, a lot of focus there. So there is some good stuff to look at, and it sounds like lots of reasons to be excited in the draft. Like we said, there is a complete pick by pick breakdown on Blake Street Banter here right now that's got links to everybody, every single pick, and a wrap up available, BlakeStreetBanter.com. So go get your dive in there on all the extra picks, because we're going to change our focus to the trade deadline and the 2024 Colorado Rockies coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes SupplyHouse.com. Get supplies from the site that's made from the skilled trade, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trade program can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. We are also brought to you by the good folks at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and they got you covered throughout all the sports season. And you might think it's kind of a slow time for sports. Well, that's not true. You got baseball going all summer long. You got the WNBA in full swing as well. And you can see all the promos and action that they got on FanDuel, because this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So follow along with the Rockies and maybe try to test your luck a little bit on your Rockies knowledge. When you head over to FanDuel.com, you can start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, and we are winding down the show with Aaron McBride here of Blake Street Banter. They just finished up an exhaustive coverage of the MLB draft, taking care of all of us here that need to know more about the Rockies prospects. Aaron, let's shift our focus to the current Rockies, the current roster here. What before we get to the trade deadline here, what are you hoping for some of these young guys? And do you think we're going to see some improvements on some of these younger guys, your Goodmans, your Tolias? What do you expect for those type of guys for the rest of this season?
Just progress, right? I don't like more playing time. Like I love JK. We're a huge JK fan at Blake Street Banter, man of the people. But it's like get rid of them and the whole Chris Bryant thing, obviously. But like Hunter Goodman should be playing a lot more. Which if one of these catchers get moved, Hunter Goodman behind the plate. When he's behind the plate, he's better with the bat. Like you can look at all those stats; those are there. He will vouch for that too. I would love to see Michael Tolia continue just getting this last shot, last hurrah to kind of figure it out. And I don't know, maybe this is a question for you because I was thinking about this earlier. Are we okay if this is who Michael Tolia is? Like,
I mean, I don't like sub 200 batting averages and that, and so I'd like to see where the sample ends. I do think the best way to answer that for me is he deserves the start for the rest of the season. I don't care what Chris Bryant's health situation. I don't care about the contract. He can't play defense. Every time the Rockies have put Chris Bryant into the field, he has gotten hurt. So if you have to play Chris Bryant, if you insist that you're going to continue to play Chris Bryant, you're going to have to swallow the tough pill of either Chris Bryant or Charlie Blackmon isn't going to play. And I know from performance-wise, you're sitting there, you're like, are we going to miss out that much? Charlie Blackmon's an exception, still swinging a pretty good bat this year. But Rockies ownership, that's literally a worst case scenario because for in their mind, they want both of them at the field at the same time. But you can see the difference in the Rockies defensively with Michael Tolia at first base. You feel a lot better about the defensive abilities of Tovar and McMahon and Rogers because Michael Tolia actually, like, people downplay first base defense when it's like, I watched a Hall of Famer play first base for 17 seasons. And you know why Tulo looks so good? You want to know why Trevor all these guys look so good? It's because Todd Helton was digging balls out of the dirt like it's nobody's problem. So I do think the leash has to be short with Tolia because the big picture worries me with strikeouts, contact and stuff. But the guy's a team leader in home runs with a fraction of the at-bats of some of these other guys. You can't take that power away from this lineup. And if he has what he did, it was interesting too, because not only was he hitting home runs, but doing it on the road like he did to go into the All-Star break. Like that means something. Cool. Yeah. Like it means something when a young Rockies player especially can hit on the road. But, I am kind of, part of me is like, I do want to see a little bit more from Sam Hilliard. I'm intrigued by what he's trying to do. Like, I think those two players are on very similar kind of career paths right now. Hilliard with a little more experience and a little bit more time. But I'm okay with it if the power is consistent and he's there. If he can JD Martinez it for me, if he can be a Schwarber where he can do that, and mixed with the fact that he can be a difference maker on offense or on defense, I'll take that. But part of me does sit here and say, like, man, I just want the Rockies to have some more just hitters, not
good
just
at bats, right?
Yes, right. Professional at bats. I mean, the most frustrating thing about the Rockies offense right now is the strikeouts and the lack of walks and just them looking outmatched constantly. So I give Tolia the benefit of the doubt, but I do sit here and I wonder, it's just like, what does that look like? But I think he deserves the rest of the season. I think for sure he deserves that. And in Chris Bryant's case, you really can't be too careful. I mean, you're going to have to give him more time off. And really, who at this point, do we even know when he's coming back? Like,
I know he's with the team. I know he's doing baseball
right?
activities a little bit.
Yeah, baseball activities, right? Yeah, right. So, I don't know, but I guess here I kind of took up most of our time here, but I'm just curious. Let's just the simplified version. Who stays? Who goes? Truly, like I think, and do you think the Rockies get solid hauls for anybody on their roster?
Solid hauls is a word. If Cal Control is the most value, I think they'll move him just because of everybody coming back, Freeland, Marquez, and then you got Cincy into the season, maybe, but definitely next year. And then you have the three-headed monster that's coming up, right? So I think you can move on from Cal Control, who has the most value right now, and I think they have to push that. I don't think the market for the two catchers is as big as people think it is. Elias Diaz is definitely the most valuable, and there are some competition out there. But Jacob Stallings has stalled out, pun intended. Like in July, he's hitting 111. In June, he was hitting 218. So he had that nice hot stretch. Like, oh, Stallings can hit. He's coming back to life. So he's still defensive first guy, but he's not as much value as what we thought we had in May, so to speak. You might see a Jalen Beeks move or Tyler Kinley. And I know Kinley's stats won't back that up, but I think look at Pierce Johnson. He's very similar vibes with that. So I think there could be some kind of return in there. But I mean, you have to try to move Cal, Elias, and then maybe a Tyler Kinley or a Beeks. You have to move one of those three.
What about, do you have to move a Brendan Rodgers? My buy, and the thing I've been saying, I've been screaming. I'm on the West Coast here. I'm out here in Washington. Brendan Rodgers to the Mariners seems like a no-brainer to me. You get pitching back. They get everything they need in a second baseman, even with the concerns because Brendan Rodgers stinks in the beginning of the season. He doesn't stink in the second half of the season. So I'm just curious. Do you think with McMahon seemingly off the table, the next biggest name I think from position player wise would be Brendan Rodgers? Do you think there's any chance Rodgers is on the move?
No, I just, again, kind of like what I was saying about the two catchers. I don't know if the value's there. Like he's an injury. I love Brendan Rodgers. Like he's one of the very first draft pick I followed from the beginning to where he is now. Not a lot of pop. Gold Glove is there, but what else does he really bring to the table? Like has an injury. I just don't see teams going out. Here's two of our top 30 draft prospects for Brendan Rodgers. I don't see that really happening. Could he move? Yeah, I just don't think it's there. And then Amador, I don't think it's quite ready, so that kind of pushes it. Maybe Shunk is maybe going to fill out that gap if they push Brendan Rodgers, and we're huge fans of Shunky at BSB.
No Alan Trejo either, because if you had
gone.
Alan Trejo still, you'd just slide Alan Trejo to play second.
Yeah, I don't think the value's there. We have these guys. I think we missed out on the value of Elias last year at the deadline. I think we missed out on Brendan Rodgers' value 2 or 3 years ago. I just don't know if it's there. And that's why I think they really need to push Cal or Gomber. One of those guys.
Got to make some moves. They can't do nothing at the deadline. That's for sure. They can't be stagnant. So we'll see how it happens. But Aaron, before we go, let's get one more plug so people can make sure they go and support all your work.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, BlakeStreetBanter.com. You'll find all of the articles and blogs. We do a lot of prospect stuff. We have a podcast that's twice a week. One on Monday, we do our minor league report. And then on Thursdays, we have a major league coverage there. And then we do a lot of banter sessions, so to speak, a lot of conversations with the prospects. Like we had Carson Palmquist on last week. We're working on some of these draftees to come on. So we do our best to share a little bit about these guys on that end. So yeah, keep an eye out on all that. And then find us on Blake Street Banter on the Twitter, on Instagram, and all the good stuff there.
Yeah, elite prospect coverage. If you want to know more about the future of the Colorado Rockies and the future that's coming sooner rather than later in some cases, Blake Street Banter's where you need to go. This has been your Friday episode of Locked On Rockies. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming services 5 days a week on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and your favorite streaming services. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Russell Westbrook to the Denver Nuggets. We'll see how that goes. And if you want to know more about that, you can learn more across the Locked On Podcast Network. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.